Let's talk about interval training because it's a big source of confusion. But first, I want you to watch this. What I want you to notice about that is how breathless I get, like how hard it actually is. That, when we talk high intensity interval training, is the difference between I'm gonna jog and I'm gonna walk. I'm gonna jog and I'm gonna walk. Now, when we're talking high intensity interval training for the purpose of turning on fat burning and reducing the time or the duration of your exercise, but still giving you all the rewards, you have to go so hard that you actually earn that rest. Take another look. So what gets me breathless and what gets you breathless are two completely different things. So when somebody says, I'm doing that, but I'm not getting out of breath, is it still interval training? The answer is no, it's not high intensity interval training. So let me give you two other definitions. So there's actually three terms we use interchangeably, but one of them is not. Just interval training. So anything can be intervals of taking a walk and stopping, jogging and walking. But if you are not doing what you would call a sprint, like going all out, getting completely breathless, that's not what we're after in terms of reducing the whole duration of your workout, still giving you all the results. And in fact, for women in menopause or midlife and beyond, what we're doing is sparing you the elevation of cortisol that can happen from exercise. So, looks like this. Let's talk about these three things. One, high intensity interval training. When I say that, again, just going back to remind you, this has to be really high intensity and you're going for, say, 20 or 30 seconds and you're going to breathlessness. Like, I have to stop. Like, I can't keep going at this pace. It's not gonna work. I am so out of breath. It's like I crossed the finish line. You never look at your heart rate and say, oh, how hard am I working? No, you're gonna finish hard. And then you need to put your hands on your knees and really take a recovery rate. Another definition and term used is called sprint interval training. And those are often just a little bit shorter. So in some studies, women doing sprint interval training were actually doing it on bicycles. They warmed up for about 8 to 12 minutes. They did then 8 seconds of sprinting as fast as they could on the bike, and then 12 seconds of recovery. And they repeated that for 20 minutes. Now, would that be a little monotonous? Potentially so, unless there was really good music on. But it was safe. So going really high intensity, your risk of injury is a little bit greater. So you want to choose some kind of activity that you're very familiar with. You can do with really great form slowly, because you don't want to turn up the volume on either resistance or on speed, and definitely not both if you can't do it well slowly, right? So really important that you think about that. So you want to choose easy movement. Lots of times it's like a repetitive movement. You could stand in place and do a one knee repeater, and potentially you could elevate your heart rate. We use that in a low impact, high intensity workout inside the Flipping 50 membership, because a lot of our members don't want to jump, maybe because of incontinence, but also maybe because of knee joints or hip joints or lower back issues. Lots of reasons why you wouldn't want to do the impact, but you don't have to necessarily. You can also do intervals in any mode of exercise you enjoy. If you want to swim, there's skill related, but actually if you're not a good swimmer and you're trying to go fast, you're probably burning more energy trying to do that. You look like a washing machine, but it's the whole point that you're getting out of breath. You can also do it with your head above the water, running in deep water or shallow water, just literally touching on the ground. You could do it on a rowing machine, on an elliptical, just anything that you love to do could become a high intensity interval training, provided you put out the effort. So there are some moves that you can go through but not feel like you're actually exerting yourself. And part of that is, I can give you the moves, but you have to actually do the effort. It's not battery operated, so you've got to think about that. But if you're not truly getting breathless, you're not doing yourself as much good as when we actually elevate we call it the VO2 max, the volume of oxygen that you can consume, and that comes higher. So as we age, unfortunately, our VO2 generally declines. When we're average age college student, it's about 42 for a female. And, ours may be lower, maybe in the 30s somewhere. And part of that is mitochondria. One of the reasons we do high intensity interval training is to support mitochondria and reducing cortisol that would otherwise escalate when we do those really long and endurance paced kinds of exercises. Going for about an hour or anything over will generally have more risk of increasing your cortisol level than it will dropping your cortisol level. Okay, so we've got interval training. We know that's just not going faster and a little bit slower and faster and a little bit slower. You've really got to get breathless, okay? So high intensity interval training. We've talked about sprint interval training. And the last one is now called, it's brand new, really, or relatively onto our vocabulary. It's called high intensity repeat training. HIIT, not a great acronym, right? But HIIT. And what that means is you are doing repeats of an all-out effort. But what research has found, and this is really important to listen to, we don't have to, and we probably should not, compare ourselves to 20-something athletic males for whom the Tabata interval training was born. They were the subjects. They were working at more than 110% of their VO2 max. And you know what that is? That is extremely uncomfortable. And that is losing your cookies in the wastebasket between your interval repeats. And nobody wants to exercise at that level and feel like it, or they certainly don't want to repeat it. And we want you to exercise on a regular basis. But when you exercise and you're doing high intensity repeat training, here's what we use. So let's say you are going to either power walk or run, depending on which you are, walker or runner, and you're going to do it on a hill. That's how you're going to do your inclines. So if you, on the first and second interval, you reach X on that hill, and then you turn around and you walk back down so that you can repeat it and you're completely recovered, and you do it again, and the third time, you don't make it as high. You're done. So whenever it is, maybe it's the fourth one for you, the fifth one, or the sixth one, you're done. If you can't go as hard against the same kind of resistance you did in that earlier set, or reach the same distance that you did within the same time frame. When you lose your form is another way to tell. If you just feel like I'm getting sloppy, I'm afraid I'm going to twist my ankle. We know when we get there. Then you want to stop. And a lot of times when you're looking at the workout of the day on the chalkboard or the dry erase board, or you're reading some kind of here's the printout, this is your workout today. If we follow that blindly and we don't co-collaborate, meaning you give your input about, no, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I should do any more. You need to know when to pull the plug. That's success, because then you're training just the good ones. You're training really good form. You're training really good effort. And that will mean you'll get a lot stronger, a lot sooner. But when we get sloppy and we just say, no, I was supposed to do 6 of them today and I haven't done them yet, you are probably doing yourself more damage than good if you're losing form and or you're not putting out the same amount of effort, because things get wishy-washy, they get murky in the middle. When you're tired, you're losing form, you don't actually work as high. And then because you don't work as high, you tend to think, well, I don't need to recover as much. So you tend to work in the middle ground, and there's not a lot of benefits to be found there. The bulk of your benefits, especially after 50 or in later stages of perimenopause and beyond that, happen when you're actually in the very highest of high, just a very small fraction of your week's time of exercise, and when you're in the lowest of low, when you're really just going for walks and you're going about being a busy and active person all day, every day, taking lots of breaks, not sitting down for long periods of time, which reminds me, it's time for me to get up. So I hope this was helpful. Quick recap. There's 3 kinds of really true high intensity interval training, and they're called high intensity interval training, or HIIT. They're called sprint interval training, probably just a little bit shorter, 15 to 20 second bursts at the very most in that count. And then the last one is high intensity repeat training. But here's the biggest thing that we've learned about all of them. You can take whatever rest you need to be completely 100% recovered. And here's what it looks like. You can breathe with your mouth closed through your nose entirely comfortably. If you can't, you're still mouth open, breathing through your mouth, you're not completely recovered. So that's the gauge. We can look at heart rate, but heart rate sometimes lies. And if you're doing a short interval, do you know that your heart rate monitor hasn't even caught up to you? It's telling you after the fact. So a heart rate monitor when you do interval training is really not a good way to gauge, am I working hard enough? It's a great association for when I work really hard. This tends to be the range where my heart rate is. That's great information, but it's mostly an association. So how you feel never lies, ever. So if you're feeling like I'm out of breath, done, you're there, success. I'm completely recovered. I am ready to tackle that again. I'm breathing entirely through my nose. That's total recovery. And you want that equal and opposite high and low when you're doing interval training. Think of driving your car through town. What eats more gas? When you get out on the interstate or when you stop and start through town, right? So we're eating more gas when we do that stop start. Similarly, when we do interval training, we're doing that stop start. We're taking more energy. It's not just elevating the heart rate and then coasting for 60 minutes. That doesn't take a lot of energy, but it does build up a lot of stress. When you're under stress, body under stress stores fat, can't burn fat. So that's how you do interval training, whether you're over 40 or if you want to give some advice to your 20-something, good luck with that. But this is how you want to do it if you're tackling interval training for the reason that you want to fat burn. Now, if you're just coming off the couch and you want to jog versus walk, you may just alternate jogging and walking. But think about, what's my purpose? Why am I doing this? And start breathing really hard if it's about fat burning and really reducing the time and the duration of your workout. How often should you do high intensity interval training of any one of those forms? Really, you want to start with once a week. Gradually, after a couple of weeks, see how you feel. Make sure you're recovering really well and no injuries, because when you do high intensity, even if it's not high impact, it does come with a little bit more risk of injury. So you've got to pay close attention to how you feel. All right, take another good look at what interval training really looks like. Here's a couple examples. Okay, and remember the words you've always been waiting for. It's all about you. So choose the exercises, the activities, and the modes that you like and that you can do based on your body's ability to have impact, to jump or hop, versus maybe you need something that is lower in impact that still lets you work. A rowing machine, an elliptical, the swimming pool, all of those are extremely low impact, and you can walk as well and just either use speed or incline, meaning pick a steep hill and do repeats on that. Let me know how it goes. Let me know what your mode of choice is when you do high intensity interval training.